So I was an Army intel officer. Spent most of my time out of Fort Benning. And I chose Stanford for a couple reasons. One, I was a West Coaster. I grew up in Oregon originally. And I'm married. And so we thought long-term we wanted to be on the West Coast. And so that kind of dropped out some of the East Coast schools from what we were really seriously considering. So that was my geographical preference. And then the two winners outside that for me were kind of entrepreneurial focus. And I don't just mean tech VC entrepreneurship. When I think about entrepreneurship, I think about it in a wide sense of, I get the sense from Stanford that we have one of the more, people go from the Stanford MBA into a wider degree of things post MBA than from other schools that I looked at. So I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I got excited about having a school that would allow me to seriously look at anything from government work to nonprofits to entrepreneurship of all kinds to standard consulting, finance, etc. And then culture fit. I'm a kind of a West Coast casual guy. I didn't want to go to a business school that wanted me to wear a tie or a suit. And I liked the kind of first name basis. Everyone's here to help each other, not competing to rank, things like that. Like I wanted to, that was kind of my style, and I thought the school matched that well.
So my name is Nico. I was in the Navy, a submarine officer, and I chose Stanford for several reasons as well. The last 5 years, I was in New England, never lived on the West Coast, so I definitely was interested in a new change of pace. I also felt that what was unique to Stanford is that I would be outside my comfort zone, and that I think everything from the classroom setting to the clubs to events like small group dinners, there are opportunities littered throughout the day where you can really get to know your classroom or your classmates, especially with the class size about a 417. Like you really do get to know all your classmates. So that's something that really resonated within me. And I was also, like Sawyer said, very interested in the entrepreneurial aspect. And I feel that Stanford lives and breathes the entrepreneurial spirit. So there are anything you can think of, I truly believe you can kind of make a reality here.
I'm Catherine. I was a captain in the Marine Corps, a supply officer, spent most of my time in Okinawa. And I chose Stanford kind of for similar reasons to what Nico said. I wanted to get outside of my comfort zone. I was born and raised on the East Coast, went to undergrad in Boston, and never lived on the West Coast before, so wanted to kind of try something new, a new culture. Also, the entrepreneurship aspect was really outside of my comfort zone as well. There's a lot of people here that are willing to take risks on a big idea that they have, and I thought it was just a really exciting atmosphere to be around. And finally, and this was a sense that I kind of had before I got to Stanford, but it's really been hammered home since being here, is it really truly is a collaborative culture as well. People are genuinely rooting for each other to succeed and really eager to help out their classmates in whatever way they can in achieving their goals. So I'm really glad that I came here, and I think it made a right choice for me.
My name's Ryan Bolles. I was an F-18 pilot in the Marine Corps, and for me, I think the GSB, when I looked at a lot of schools, had very unique opportunities that I wouldn't be able to find elsewhere. And one thing that kind of stood out was that the program and the institution really focused on developing students beyond the classroom, and trying to help you like fully develop as a person. And one thing that stood out to me was a quote that when people graduate from here, they when they walk across the stage, they feel just more comfortable in their own skin, which is a very qualitative type measure, but I thought was very important and a crucial element to be able to make this transition and enter into like a completely new industry and a completely new workplace.
One question that came up earlier for the group, and one that I want to pose here, is can you talk a little bit about what the transition was like from being in service to being a student?
Yeah, so I'm starting, but I'm also probably a little different than most people on this call, which is I actually separated from the Army and then had about 18 months of work in the civilian world before I came to the GSB. So that is possible for those who are kind of feel like veterans, being a veteran or being on active duty or are in the reserves now was, one career ago or a couple of years ago. There are those of us who do that. I spent, after doing my time in the Army, I was spent a little time kind of in the startup and early investing world in Seattle, and then applied from there down and came down to the GSB. So that's a non-traditional track, but you can separate and then apply and still kind of leverage what you learned and your experience as a veteran, both in the application and then once you're at school.
Cool. Anybody else on the transition?
I could speak on the other end of Sawyer. I went on, I separated, went on terminal in July, and then came to Stanford in September. So it was a fairly quick turnaround for me, but I would say just based off the programming that's available to all incoming MBA ones, that it was a very good structured format of getting into the groove of things, getting to know your classmates. And so it really wasn't a time demand or a time sink for me to kind of like transition other than moving out here. So I thought the Stanford set it up pretty well for not just military, but for everyone to come together and kind of get to know each other and get started.
Cool. So I'm actually going to use this as a transition to our Q&A box. So for our attendees, this is the time to start asking some questions about the experience, again, from the experts. Just wanted to let people know about my appreciation for the Vets Club and everybody on this panel. Today's event is really supported by the energy of our Vets Club, and this came about because of their advocacy and like support for future veterans. So much respect, so much appreciation to them for helping launch this event. So the question that tailors off of your response, Nico, is how does the civilian military dynamic on campus, how does that shape up? So you mentioned a little bit about that transition in Stanford, kind of easing that a little bit, but how does that play out on the ground? Like, do people tend to stick with people from similar industries, or is there like a bridge, and what does that look like?
Yes, and I saw one of the examples was Leadership Labs. For those that are not familiar, Leadership Labs is a core course that you take in your first quarter here, and that's where you get to be in an experimental setting, get to go through role play scenarios. And at least for me, I could experience that it really resonated with me because the scenarios that played out, I felt like I had at least seen in some aspect previously due to my military experience. And for those reasons, I felt that it was a huge benefit to my team being able to share those experiences with them. I will say that compared to maybe what other schools are, the Veterans Club is not that large. So it's kind of, in that sense, it is what you can make of it. So there are going to be people that may not necessarily know that much about the military. So the onus is a little bit on you to kind of help them understand. And it's an extremely great conversation starter talking about your experiences, because everyone here is very receptive and very curious to learn more about you. So it's a very good opportunity to kind of share those experiences. And then there are instances like in Leadership Labs where you can really show the leadership experiences that you gained in the military.
I would agree with what Nico said. Everyone here is really open to learning about their classmates' different experiences. And the Vets Club itself isn't really an insular, isolated club in the community. It's one that is constantly reaching out to our peers and our classmates to share our experiences, see what questions that they have. The culture on campus is so collaborative that you really naturally bridge that gap and get to know each other. They'll get to know you as people too, not just as the veteran in the class, but like you're a more three-dimensional human being than just that. So they'll really want to know about your experiences in the military, but also just want to get to know you as a person as well.
All right. So speaking about experiences, can you tell us a little bit about something unexpected that you experienced either during the admissions process or while at the GSB?
I think, I don't mean to be like dismissive of this, but I think the most surprising thing was getting accepted. And I say that because I think there are a lot of people that probably don't apply to the school because the acceptance rate is low. Anecdotally, like I am probably below the average for most of the numbers that you see on the website, but I'm still sitting in this program, and I think that's because Stanford looks a lot at the entire person. And I think the essays are, something for you can use to stand out amongst your peer group. And I'd say, like, if you're interested in this school and you're interested in this program, the cost is literally just the time it takes for you to fill out the application. And I think the application to this program is very unique in that there's really no opportunity cost because it's a massive reflection exercise. And I think that's just like a value add and a benefit to anybody that's applying to these programs, to like really think about why they want to do it, what they hope to get out of it, which I would submit as an really important thing to know when you walk onto campus in the fall to any program that you enter, because things happen very quickly. And if you have even just general guidelines for where you're looking to move, it will be very beneficial. And I think you'll extract more value out of the program than if you try and go in a million different directions at once.
Cool. So you mentioned a little bit about the acceptance and that admission process. There is a question here that's addressed towards Sawyer, and I think you indicated that you're going to answer it live. So I think this could be a great chance to and open it up to also other panelists if you have thoughts on this. So Sawyer earlier mentioned that he had not decided exactly what he was going to do after getting his MBA. Like, how did you approach that, and how did you share that, especially knowing that some other folks are in the same boat now that you were in then?
Yeah, actually going back to answer one of the surprising things for me, the first thing that came to mind is when I got the call that I was admitted. The admissions officer who called me said that she was excited for my wife and I to be here, and named my wife by name. And I thought, like, I don't know if I put my wife's name in any part of the application. And a part of it was like, oh, how much research do they do or something. But on the other hand, it really felt like they had looked at my application and got excited about me as a person and the family I was bringing. And so that to me was like a kind of a strong signal. Like, okay, it wasn't just like, oh, I checked a GMAT box, checked like recommendation box. Like, they knew who they were getting, and they were excited. So that was pretty compelling for me. On the application, yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do all last year either. So a lot of people come in with that perspective, I think, whether they admit it or not. As Ryan said, it's a lot of self-reflection and figuring out what's next. So my recommendation is how I articulated it in the essays and the application was, here are the things I care most about. And these are parts of my past that have made that clear to me. And I want to spend more time solving this general area of problems. I want to invest in small communities. I want to develop leaders. I want to help those who come from rural areas like I do. I don't know how to do that yet, but I know that because of these experiences, business is a way for me to do that. And I want to spend 2 years at the MBA program getting the skills and reflecting on how to do that better. And that was kind of how I wrote it. And I was concerned that it was a little vague. I wasn't saying I want to be a consultant in 2 years and then do this. I wasn't being specific, but it was true. And I think I hope that the truth of, I don't know exactly what this looks like, but I know what I care most about, and I know Stanford will help me get there. I think that came through. So I would encourage people not to try to write something they think the AdCom wants to hear. I think that does not hold the power of being true, even if it's a little unsure.
Yes, I second that. Just speak to what's meaningful for you. And this also kind of addresses one of the questions from earlier today. I was like, how much exploration happens during business school? So kind of nice to see how this has gone a little full circle here. Okay. So there is a question here about the experience. So we're going to shift gears just a little bit here. So Catherine and Nico, this is a question from Danny. In your intros, you mentioned coming to the GSB to push your comfort zone and to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Can you tell us, maybe, is there like an anecdote or story that encapsulates like a moment where that's happened?
I think one of the things that they do at Stanford is consistently try and set up spaces where people can make themselves vulnerable and really share stories about their past or like things that make them insecure. And that was a very unfamiliar thing to me, and I think still is kind of something that makes me uncomfortable, making myself like so vulnerable and open to people that some people I might know, some people I might not even know that well yet. One of the things that they do every week at Stanford is have something called Talk, where people can just talk for 45 minutes about a story that's meaningful to them. And so far, I haven't done one yet, but I plan on doing one next year. And they've all been really powerful stories, the stories that the classmates have shared so far. And I'm excited for the chance to maybe share my story as well.
Yes, I would second everything that Catherine said. There are things that are sprinkled throughout one's day at Stanford that can really give you the opportunity to come outside your comfort zone. I distinctly remember the very first class of managing groups and teams is when the teacher told us, or the professor told us, all right, introduce yourself to the person sitting next to you. And don't say hi, don't say how are you, but delve right into the question about, tell me the story behind your name. And I was just taken back a little bit, because I'm thinking when I meet people or introduce or get to know someone, that maybe that's not a conversation that comes up at all. But there are instances like that one day that I experienced where they kind of have like this way of being able to kind of deep quickly and establish that trust and that community. And like Catherine said, there's the opportunity where you have classmates that can talk, that give a talk for 40 minutes, and some of them they're really deep and personal. And these are like kind of opportunities that you're thinking to yourself, in another setting, I don't know if I would have been able to learn that much about somebody else. And so I'm grateful that there's these opportunities to kind of step outside the comfort zone at Stanford.
Cool. So we
and I think another thing that helps too is like a lot of MBA programs, there's this policy of grade non-disclosure as well. So if you're looking to get out of your comfort zone in a more academic, practical sense, it's pretty low risk to take courses that really challenge you a lot, because even if it is pushing kind of yourself way past what you've ever done before and you don't get the best grade or the grade you were hoping for, it doesn't really matter. The course program is designed for you to be able to try those new things and really push yourself.
Nice. And so question here, we talked a little bit about the transition, the application process, transition to the GSB, a little bit about the experience, and now like already starting to think of the next steps. Can you guys talk a little bit about like the job hunt process, like, and the recruiting process? What's that like, especially like if you happen to be considered and you're not sure what you want to do just yet? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I can start us off here. So there's a specific question here from Ryan about recruiting process. How quickly does it start upon arrival of the GSB? And how do you engage with that if you still are unsure? So for me, I was unsure. And I actually started kind of working backwards. I thought about things I didn't want to do. And as I went to some of the recruiting events and things that happened, I became clear I didn't really want to do consulting. I didn't want to do some of the traditional finance stuff. Some of the big tech companies weren't appealing to me. So that I just kind of started limiting. I went from like what's all possible to then marking things off the list. And I I didn't have an internship, fully locked in till probably spring quarter, and that was fine. There's a lot of pressure here in the fall if you're doing traditional recruiting, or maybe every MBA, to like get that locked in early. But many, many, many people don't have internships, or certainly real clarity about their jobs, until a few months before summer. And I guess one thing that's a little bit specific to the GSB is there's an academic adjustment period in the fall, which basically prevents recruiters from harassing you or having events or anything for like till Thanksgiving, I think, or it's 8 weeks or 6 weeks. So all the first years are basically on lockdown. And I found actually that was great for the first month or so, because it allowed me just to like be here and meet people and focus on school and the move and things like that. But then I actually started kind of getting antsy. Like, I want to go explore now. It didn't, but I thought it was a nice time, because then I couldn't expect myself to also be doing the job hunt thing yet, because technically it was like against school policy, and I wasn't getting emails or getting recruiter things or having events every night I feel like I should be at. It was all kind of quiet.
I can maybe add some points as well. Definitely second the academic adjustment period. That Sawyer mentioned. I found that to be pretty helpful to allow me to like focus on one area at a time. I think in the veteran community this might echo, or it was a bit of like a phased approach for me. And academic adjustment period was kind of like a line where I was shifting my focus from academics until that ended, and then trying to blend in some recruitment along with academics. One thing that I did before coming to school was explore some of the like on the more traditional side, some companies and firms will have things that you can either attend over the summer. So if you have the opportunity to take terminal leave or vacation or stop working with a little bit of space before you start school, I think that was very helpful to do like formal and informal searching. So I did some research on the internet. I spoke with people in industries and kind of started to hone the questions that I wanted to ask people, so I could really listen to their answers and see what resonated with me and what I wanted to focus on. I ended up focusing on consulting. I went through a fairly large cycle, including an internship at Goldman that kind of directed me away from some of those, some other industries, as well as looking at stuff in tech. And I thought that the recruitment process, when that probably more traditional process started, it is pretty fast. So if you do think that that's what you want to go down, or your research and reflection over the summer starts putting you on that path, it's good to do a little bit of the pre-work before that kicks off, because when academic adjustment period ends, you're kind of like in a massive sprint until from it was like October through January until final round interviews were complete.
Yeah. How did folks like facilitate like learning about job opportunities or pivots? Did you use the Career Management Center? Did you network through events on campus, through classmates or alumni? Like, what were some of the different ways that you've engaged with the recruiting process?
We attended a lot of events that were hosted on campus, but I also talked a lot to my classmates, because your classmates are going to have worked in all of these industries that you're looking at, most likely, including you'll probably have classmates that have founded their own companies in the past and have experienced entrepreneurship as well. So really, almost anything that you might be interested in, you can probably find a peer that has done something like that and would be more than happy to sit down over coffee or take a walk and have a chat about it.
I did a lot of some events. There's a lot of like brown bag lunches where companies will come and talk about themselves or like their industry, and they're usually there with some business cards because they want an intern or two, and they'll literally be every lunch, like every day of the week at lunch, there'll be multiple brown bag lunches, and usually you get free food and you get to listen to the company. If you're interested, shake their hands afterwards and talk to them, follow up email. So I did a lot of that. I also found I did a lot. There was I held myself accountable to a couple alumni reach outs per week. I think for the first 2 quarters I was here. And I found that particularly effective, especially in the veteran community, because it's a really small community. So there was one veteran who graduated from here probably 10 years ago. I've never met. He was in the Navy. I was in the Army. And he has no connection to me other than he went to the GSB 10 years ago and now works as an investor in Texas for a big Silicon Valley entrepreneur kind of guy. And not only did he take my first call, but then he suggested a time to follow up next week. We had another 45-minute call, and I was out of questions. I didn't even know what to talk about anymore. But he was just so happy to chat that, and that kind of daisy chains onto, oh, you're interested in this? Here, you got to talk to this guy or this gal. And so I found the veterans alums to be super helpful, small but really impactful.
Cool. And we're getting close to this section. So if we can close out, I have one question that actually encapsulates a couple of different things folks have been asking in the Q&A box. If you could share something like a piece of advice, either with applicant you or like MBA 1-year you when you were just starting, what would that advice be?
Yeah, for MBA 1 me, I would say that if you haven't heard already, there is this notion of the FOMO, or fear of missing out. There are going to be a lot of events going on campus. You got your classwork, you got these career events, you have clubs, and then you have just the natural tendency of classmates just wanting to hang out, grab a drink, or go for a walk or whatnot. And it can very easily overwhelm you very quickly. And the thing is, it's just treat it like you've treated anything else in the past. It's something that, it's okay to say no to certain events. It's okay to take certain time. There's not this notion that everyone's doing something at any given time. Like it is okay to this is your journey. So, make sure you take time to do what you want to do. And if you need some time off, to make sure you do that, make this experience how you want this experience to be.
World.